Hi, good afternoon. Thank you to those that have already joined. It's just 6 o'clock, so we are going to wait a couple of minutes before we kick off this webinar. I'll go through this housekeeping shortly. We can see that some more people are joining, but yeah, do have a read through this page, and then I'll go through them in just one more minute. We'll start at 2 minutes past. Thanks to those of you just joining us. I can still see a few people joining as we speak, so we're going to wait until 2 minutes past, and then I'll run through a welcome and some housekeeping. Okay, well, I think we'll make a start. It's 2 minutes past, so thank you very much for joining this webinar. We are recording tonight's webinar, and it will be uploaded to the project page. So if you've joined, we won't be able to see you on the recording, so don't worry about that. But it will be the content of the presentation and what the presenters have to say will be available on the project page, so that people can then view this webinar at their leisure. We will be presenting a series of slides and all the plans and proposals this evening, and you should notice that you have, as part of this meeting, a question function where you can submit through the chat your questions. So as we go along through the presentation, if questions occur to you, please do submit them through that, and then what we'll do is we'll come back in the Q&A session, and then we'll pick out the questions and provide responses there at the end. So you'll have the opportunity to submit new questions at the end, but if something occurs to you as you go through, then feel free to enter that as we go. So hopefully that's all pretty clear. We'll then move on with the main presentation. So this is what we're gonna cover this evening. We'll do some introductions shortly, and then I'll cover off a little bit about the journey to date and also explain the funding position for this project. We'll then go into a full presentation of all the proposals. We'll then cover the opportunities that there are to get involved in this phase of engagement, look at the next steps, and we'll then have the Q and answer session that I've just talked about. So again, thank you for joining. My name is Richard Eason. I'm the Healthy Streets Programme Director. So this project, along with a number of others, fall within my portfolio of work. And I'd just like to introduce the rest of the team so you can see who's who. I'll first introduce Aga, the project manager.
Thank you. Hello, Richard. My name is Agnieszka Jezierska, and I'm the project manager working within Richard's team. Thank you. If I introduce Alex.
Hi there, my name is Alex Stebbings from NRP, and we're transport specialists, and we've been focusing on the highway design and also understanding the impacts. So, for example, traffic modelling and looking at the impact on parking and loading, that sort of thing. I'll pass on to Tim.
Thanks, Alex. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim South. I'm an associate landscape architect for LDA Design, representing the landscape design for the team. Thanks.
And Liz.
My name is Liz Rhodes. I'm the Healthy Streets Public Relations Manager, and I look after communications and engagement for the Healthy Streets programme.
Okay, great. That's great. Thanks, everyone. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So looking at the journey to date then, so just to have a recap, because this project has been running for some time. So back in 2019, the council submitted a successful bid to what was called the Livable Neighbourhood programme, funded by Transport for London. Obviously, a lot has happened since 2019, and we'll come back to that shortly. But then in the autumn of 2019, we conducted our first phase of our community engagement, which was essentially an exercise where, with the community, we established some design principles for things that the project should adhere to, sort of going forward. Now, I'll come on to those shortly as to exactly what they are. And then in autumn 2020, we had a number of co-design workshops with the community where we developed the public realm. By this point, we were now into COVID, but we continued the engagement of the project and had some very successful online co-design sessions using Google Jamboards and various other online tools. And then in summer 2021, we then presented those findings back to the community. So we're now in summer 22, and what we're now presenting is the combined plan, the whole scheme, for people to have a look through and to provide their feedback to us on how they think the proposals actually align with those community design led principles that we established right at the beginning. This engagement period will run started on the 27th of July and will run right through the majority of September, so allowing people plenty of opportunity to participate and get involved. Next slide, please. So here are the community-led design principles. A number of you viewing hopefully were involved in the development of those, and we've fed back on these to the community previously. But the first one is that Enfield Town is safe for all, and this of course means, you know, from a road safety perspective, but also just from a feeling of safety. And we want to ensure that people feel safe in the town centre, whether it's during the daytime or perhaps also into the evening, as we look to try to develop some form of evening economy in the town centre. People want to see a town centre that has a vibrant economy, and we heard a lot about people wanting to see a mix of different retail options. So lots of people keen to see independent retailers in the town centre, but also, you know, keen to see the retention of some of those sort of key stores, key anchor stores that I think do help bring people into the town centre. People wanted to see the town centre celebrate its heritage, so the market square was seen, you know, very affectionately by a good number of people, and that we wanted the plans to build upon the heritage that the town centre already has. Offering transport choices was another key design principle, so that we could ensure that people could travel into the town centre in a number of different ways, and crucially that when they were in the town centre, that they could move around sort of freely and safely. And then finally, Enfield Town being a great place to be. And I think this was more about people wanting to see more than just retail options, but to have a range of different reasons for why they might want to visit Enfield Town. Different events and activities and a range of different offers that would encourage people to visit more often and stay longer. So those were the community-led design principles that have then shaped the development of the designs as we move forward. Next slide, please. So before we show you those plans, and those plans will show the entire scope of what we would like to do if we had sufficient funding, it's important that I do talk briefly about the funding position. As I've already said, 2019 pre-COVID was when TfL agreed to align around £6 million to this project, but since then, and since COVID has come along, the TfL have paused the Livable Neighbourhood programme, and we're still waiting for clarity on what might happen to that going forward. Despite that, the council in that intervening time have managed to secure and align £5 million of funding to this programme. So whatever happens, even if Transport for London say actually that they're not going to continue to fund this project in the town centre with the funding that we've already secured. So what we need to do now is really wait to see the position from TfL, and we're hoping in the autumn we'll have a bit more certainty. The government has now sent a proposal to Transport for London that they're currently reviewing, which is a funding settlement to address the shortfall in Transport for London's revenue that came about as a result of lockdown. And once TfL have reviewed that, they'll then be able to communicate with the borough on what funding may or may not be available. Once we understand how much money is available, we can then determine what the scope of the project is. But I think what's important to note is that the plans that you're about to see can be delivered incrementally and in modules, and as and when funding is secured, we can deliver certain aspects of the project. But you are going to see now that the whole proposals if full funding could be secured for the project. Next slide, please. I'll now hand over to Tim and Alex, who are going to take you through those proposals.
Thank you, Richard. Next slide. So this plan gives us an overview of the whole area that we'll be talking about today. So we've got Enfield Town Station at the top right here, and then we've got the Little Park Gardens bus station at the top left here, running down, the Dugdale Centre here, and we'll run through in a clockwise motion around the town centre. I'll be focusing on the highway elements, and Tim will be focusing on the public realm spaces. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. As you just mentioned, as Alex kind of leads the journey throughout the town, I'll be talking through each of the key spaces in turn. So Station Plaza, Library Green, and then a small pocket park off Church Street, followed by the Market Square, and finally Fountain Island. But I'll talk about each of those in turn. Thanks, Alex.
Okay, so we're starting at the top right. So as I said, we've got Enfield Town Station here, and then running along here westbound, we're pedestrianising Coleman Parade. So currently there is a service road through here. We're making it wider footways, introducing planting, and also putting a safe route through for cycling. Obviously the businesses in this area need to load, so we've introduced a loading bay in front of the bus stop, and some of the loading bays through the town centre will also accommodate or support the evening economy. So for example, this loading bay will allow in the evenings 20 minutes of parking, so people can pop to a takeaway or something and pick up a meal and move on. So there'll be dual purpose bays loading during the day, and then short-term parking in the evening. Moving over to St Andrews Road, so access and egress from St Andrews Road will be blocked, so only emergency vehicles and cyclists will be able to pass through this point here, but it will still allow access into the new Riverloop car park. Tim will talk more about the space in front of the Enfield Town Station, but the key element, well, one of the key elements is that the service road has been removed. So we're relocating the pickup and drop off to this point here, so still in close proximity to the station, and we've also continued the protected cycle facilities through the space. Within the new Riverloop car park, we're proposing a new taxi rank. So this space at the moment is behind some guard railing, and it's quite closed off. So we'll open up this space here and make it much more visible from the station, and introduce two taxi rank. We've got crossing facilities here, so connecting from St Andrews Road into the cycle facility, protecting cycle facilities, maintaining the informal crossing here if people are choosing to walk up St Andrews Road. But at the junction itself, we did look at trying to get direct crossings in here, but queues blocked back down the High Street and also along Southby Road and caused a lot of delays to buses. So what we are proposing is widening the crossings and widening the island, and then also to the west of the junction, widening the footways on both sides of the road. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, so so the first space is the first key space, I should say, is Enfield Station Plaza, and the idea is this becomes kind of a welcome arrival and a celebration of Enfield's culture and heritage as kind of the concept. Station Plaza will present kind of a beautiful, welcoming, greener space, and make kind of those walkable connections into the town and other locations really clear and legible. broadly speaking, the space is made up of kind of a generous, high-quality paved plaza, surrounded by and protected by planting, and also there's that segregated cycle route to the perimeter that Alex mentioned, with those very, very clear crossing points. Next slide. Thanks. Okay, so the space will be surrounded by planting, which will provide a sense of kind of refuge from the surrounding roads, and enhance comfort for people sitting, dwelling, or waiting for onward travel within the space. The approach for planting throughout all spaces is not only to provide kind of an attractive, regular character, but is driven by other important targets, including kind of improving air quality, supporting greater biodiversity, reducing flood risk, providing cooling, and be very maintainable. That's quite important. The distinctive rain garden planting approach character will reference Enfield's deep cultural and historic connection with water, but also fulfill a very functional role in contributing to the drainage strategy, so capturing and taking advantage of surface water runoff from hard surfaces, so from the carriageway, from the hard surfaces, rather than kind of simply discharging that into sewers. The same planting strategy is employed kind of elsewhere within the project area, wherever possible, really. So that's kind of the standard approach that we've gone with. Next slide, I think. Yep, so comfortable and accessible seating will also be integrated along those rain garden edges through a sculpture approach to the edges. Seating will be designed with kind of accessibility and comfort in mind, but also will be kind of will sensitively reduce kind of some of those the antisocial kind of potential. Next slide. Station Plaza will also reference the work of Keats, whose school, interestingly, Clark's Academy, was within the context of Station Plaza, and other literary connections to Enfield. So weaving this into the fabric of the place to further kind of reinforce the town's distinctive cultural narrative. There's some examples here of how we might integrate imagery and typography into the fabric of the scheme as kind of those distinctive and tangible references. Next slide. Okay, so existing view that we're all quite familiar with. So this view kind of really clearly shows a space dominated by cars, vans, kind of the highways clutter. It gives a sense of a place for cars, not people. It's not very welcoming. There's some lovely architecture actually surrounding this space that you kind of are distracted from, and also there's like a great green backdrop as well that you don't really see because of kind of the cars and all sort of paraphernalia in the foreground. Next slide. Yep, so here you can see kind of we've brought that kind of green into the space with kind of the new rain garden planting to the edge. So that provides that kind of sense of protection from the carriageway. It also has that kind of relationship with the green on the far side of the carriageway as well. Lots of places for people to sit, places to dwell, wait for onward travel. And those really clear crossing points and movement points are kind of shown very clearly there. Next slide, I think. Thanks. So a night view here. So I think this shows a very kind of safe and secure and welcoming space after dark, after daylight hours. Lighting has been developed alongside a lighting designer to ensure there's kind of sufficient lux levels. So we make sure we're lighting sufficiently and well enough to make sure those kind of levels are achieved. Alongside this, the space is supported by CCTV and an emergency help point. I should mention kind of CCTV has been and lighting has been considered for all subsequent spaces, all public realm throughout the town centre. Next slide. I think, there's also a complementary kind of raised planter with kind of a more generous lounging seat and this would have integrated art in it and a multi-stem tree within kind of the central space of central part of the space. Next slide. I think that could be it for Station Plaza. Alex.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, this just shows a view from St Andrews Road, looking towards Enfield Town Station. So we've got the new Riverloop car park on the right. and then the proposals for this area, or from this view. Next slide, please. So yeah, so you can see the taxi rank on the right, and then the space which is currently sort of hidden by guard railing along this line here is opened up, so there's clearly visible between Enfield Town Station and the taxi rank, and then this is the wider informal crossing linking St Andrews Road with Enfield Town Station. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so heading south from Enfield Town Station, we'll start with Jennerton Road. Currently, there's a pedestrian crossing further south on Jennerton Road. We're proposing to relocate that further north. So if you're heading towards the shopping centre here, there's a better alignment with the crossing through the passage and then across a second crossing to link in there. So improving the connection with the shopping centre. And we've also got our protected cycle facilities running south on Jennerton Road. And then onto London Road, we've relocated the bus stop slightly further south. Again, this is just to improve queuing and stopping delays at the junction itself with Church Street. And again, we've got a good connection into the shopping centre from the bus stop. We have relocated the crossing slightly, and then further south we've got loading bays and a blue badge bay, and again with a protected cycle facility running northbound along London Road. Next slide, please. So at the southeast corner of the town centre, we've got the junction of Jennerton Road, Cecil Road and London Road. So at the moment on this corner here, we've got a sort of left turn slip road which traffic use and comes around that corner slightly fast. So we're proposing to build that out, widen the footways, which enables us to have planting, and also continue that protected cycle facility westbound into Cecil Road, but also reduce the number of crossings for pedestrians through the junction. So we've got single crossings on all arms of the junction here. And just to say, in terms of the cycle movements through, we'll come on to it on Cecil Road. We did look at maintaining the cycle route from Green Lanes northbound along London Road, but the bus journey times in particular were quite an issue here. So we're routing them through the quiet ways via Sydney Road and Raleigh Road, which we'll come on to shortly. And then, as you can see here, the cycle facility westbound continues along Cecil Road here, and we've got a protected eastbound cycle facility as well. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of a bus stop bypass which we're proposing. So we're looking at Cecil Road here from Sydney Road, looking towards London Road. So at the moment we've got a lay-by bus stop, a cycle facility, and then 2 traffic lanes. And if we have a look at the proposed view, so we've got the protected cycle facility here with zebra crossings, so pedestrians who are on the footway outside Lidl can cross here safely to get to the bus sort of waiting area, which has the bus shelter on. And then also you can see here we've got the protected eastbound cyclists. Richard touched on the funding. Obviously, the aspiration is that we have planting along here as protection. It may be that as we get that incremental funding that we have that as a sort of segregated curve initially, but there will be some safe protection for cyclists. Thank you. Next slide, please. So continuing along Cecil Road, again, we maintain the protected cycle facilities in the westbound and eastbound direction. And as I mentioned, on Sydney Road and also on Raleigh Road, we're providing cycle links up. So the connection between London Road is via these 2 roads. Further west, we've introduced a new zebra crossing here. There's sort of limited locations at where we can put this because of the drop curbs where people can drive into properties, for example, the church, and also the trees in the area, which obviously we want to maintain. So this aligns as best we can with the proposed, or the existing route, into the park here. Also, just to mention, we've got these sections here that allow loading for a short period along Cecil Road. So we've removed the single yellow line to accommodate the cycle facilities, but we recognise that the residents and businesses still need deliveries. So there are sections of single yellow line, double yellow line, where people will be able to load at certain times in the day. So you can see an example of one here, and we've also got one further to the west here. Next slide, please. So moving to the southwest corner of the town centre, just touching on Enfield Road here, we've got 3 new blue badge bays. So that obviously provides provision for the library, but also the surgery to the south, the GP practice. Cycle facilities continue along here, but a key change here, and Tim will come on to talk about the changes we're proposing at Library Green, but is improving the connection between Town Park and Library Green. So what at the moment you've got a rather odd island here, which is affectionately known Banana Island. This will come out, and also the zebra crossing, which is sort of further to the east and not really on the design line around this location, will be replaced with a signalised crossing for pedestrians and cyclists that provides that much better connection between Library Green and Town Park. And then again, we've got the cycle facilities that continue up Cecil Road. So if you're turning left and heading west, we've got a cycle facility here. If you're looking to head towards Little Park Gardens or into the town centre, we've also got a route through the park. And again, in sections of loading, so that if deliveries are needed to the properties along Cecil Road, that can be accommodated with these spaces here. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Is that moving or not? Sorry, is that allowed?
Sorry, yeah. So just to explain, this is the existing situation at this corner here. So we've got the Banana Island, and as you can see, the hedge on the right there is sort of closes off the link between Library Green and Town Park. And next slide, please. And again, just showing you the area that's now opened up. So we've got the wide signalised crossing for pedestrians and cyclists, and then the cycle link on, and just that much clearer link between Town Park and Library Green. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I'll just talk through Library Green then. So the idea behind Library Green is the People's Garden. Next slide, please, Aga. I don't know if it's frozen or... Okay, and the idea behind is a green oasis in the heart of Enfield. I suppose to start with, and a message we heard kind of time and time again was that Library Green kind of already works well. It's a popular space for residents, workers and visitors. So the proposals here are more about kind of sensitive interventions and kind of small tweaks and adjustments rather than kind of wholesale changes. To make a good place like great, I suppose. The cherished lawns will be retained and protected as valued assets, as they are, while kind of planting to the periphery will be redefined as a more kind of biodiverse and colourful backdrop. At the same time, kind of removing the hiding potential, making the space feel safer and less attractive to antisocial behaviour. It's a problem that kind of was cropped up a few times at the previous stage that people talked about. Next stage. Next plate. No, yeah, thanks. Other proposals include, amongst other things, better seating provision, arranged for both social and more private or intimate arrangements, configurations. Next slide. Thanks. The proposals for Library Green will create kind of an opportunity for a new sensory garden. So that's located to the southwest of the space next to the library. The proposed location is kind of just beyond those kind of court hoop top fence panels right at the far end there, in the middle distance. This view also shows kind of a poor visual connection, I think, with the town park, and demonstrates a lack of kind of usable physical connections with the library building itself. Next slide. Thanks. The proposals kind of restructure kind of some of that footpath, those footpath connections and links, and actually kind of work to extend the library green out to the carriageway edge as well of Cecil Road, by drawing kind of a safe and usable cycle route and footway route kind of inside the space, and it pushes the kind of a planted boundary up to the carriageway edge there. So that kind of extends the space in a way there. There'll be a series of kind of gateway spaces which will improve kind of legibility and raise the profile of the green, welcoming people in and kind of also contributing to natural surveillance as well. This gateway space to the northwest will also provide kind of a secure covered bicycle storage. And this kind of mirrors the function kind of already present near Enfield town station. So I should say that there is bicycle parking throughout the town, or through kind of to promote active travel choices, but this kind of provides the option to park on the edge of the centre and then complete the remainder of your kind of journey on foot. So it's just providing a lot of choice for people, I think. Next slide. Yeah, so this existing view kind of, I think, demonstrates a bit of a kind of a poor visual connection and connectivity into the green from Church Street. And it also kind of shows kind of significant hiding potential and those kind of quite narrow paths as well. Next slide. So a kind of a principal move, which was talked to about earlier with Alex, with the connection over to Town Park, is to provide kind of a new central path, which can pathway which kind of connects from Church Street down to kind of Town Park through the Library Green. So really powerful, strong kind of desire line there that's kind of driven through the space and improves that connectivity. The idea is to kind of stitch Enfield's assets together, really. Lawn areas will be reinforced to key locations to kind of reduce potential erosion where kind of those events or stalls may be present. And artwork also has kind of the potential to tell a cultural narrative here about kind of the old hunting grounds, of which kind of Library Green kind of is on the edge of. Next slide. And then kind of another kind of an evening shot here, familiar story for each of the spaces, kind of a much a safe, welcoming environment. This is kind of using the existing lighting, but also kind of reinforcing that with more of the same, really, to the periphery and through. There's also potential from pop-up power units to have those kind of, you see the festoon lights there, so temporary lighting for events, evening markets, those sorts of things. Next slide. Thanks.
Okay, and we're now looking at the northwest corner. So we've got the Little Park Gardens bus station here and the top of Library Green. So we've had a lot of feedback about this junction and Sarnersfield Road, about the poor pedestrian facilities here, particularly no connection between the bus station and Library Green. So what we're proposing here is to introduce signalised crossings on all arms of the junction. In terms of cycle facilities, cyclists can continue up Church Street with protected cycle lanes, and then heading eastbound and to connect into Library Green, there's protected cycle facilities across into the route through Library Green. Slightly further east, we've got the junction of Sarnersfield Road, and again, a lot of comments through the consultation that it's very difficult to cross Sarnersfield Road with traffic coming quite fast around the corner, turning right towards the car park. So again, we're signalising this junction and putting pedestrian crossings on all arms, and we've also got a blue badge bay at the northern end of Sarnersfield Road. Next slide, please. So heading east along Church Street, At the moment, there is parking along this section of Church Street. Across the town centre, we've got over 1,000 parking bays. So what we're proposing is to remove the parking bays from this location, introduce planting. Obviously, we've got businesses in the area, so we're maintaining loading on both sides of the road. Blue badge bays on both sides of the road, and also to accommodate a lot of the motorcycles that we're seeing in the town centre, we've introduced a motorcycle bay. Tim will come on to talk in more detail about the space here, but just to say that the access to Little Park Gardens is going to be removed, but obviously from the junction with Cecil Road, you'll still be able to access Little Park Gardens to the north. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Alex. So their first space is it's New Pocket Park, where Little Park Gardens meets Church Street. The name here is to be consulted on through this kind of consultation period. So that'll be quite interesting to see what names or the names that people give for this space. The idea is to reimagine kind of a hidden stream and provide a welcome interlude from the busy high street. Next slide. And to reimagine a hidden stream, I'll just to provide a little bit of narrative to the idea behind kind of that vision and the concept arrangement, which I'll share in a moment. Sadler's Mill Stream is intriguingly kind of culverted 4 meters below the space, but it actually has a really good flow. And we've had the cover taken off, the existing cover taken off, and it's audible if that's taken away. The idea is to potentially have a new cover, potentially integrating informative artwork, which will developed at the next kind of technical design stage, to kind of allow that to be heard and to kind of explain what's going on there. The stream also connects with an outflow at Town Park, and could be used through kind of the interpretation as kind of a subtle legibility tool and storytelling tool, to kind of help connect those two places. Yeah, that's enough. Next slide. Yeah, so here's the kind of the layout that's been developed. So the new space is formed kind of by removing that vehicular access from Church Street to Little Park Gardens. It allows kind of the creation of a smaller incidental kind of pocket park, we describe it as, which provides opportunities to pause and take a break from the business of the adjacent Church Street. I think I'll show a bit more of the detail in the views in a moment. Next slide. The space will once again kind of encompass those kind of rich, biodiverse rain gardens, similar to those previously discussed for Station Plaza, as kind of a consistent and distinctive kind of feature with kind of the beautiful and climate resilient seasonal flowering species within it. It's kind of worth noting that these will be particularly useful here actually, as we're at kind of a very low lying part of the town, which kind of suffers frequent flooding. So capturing that that rainwater will be a really useful function here. Wherever kind of the constraints permit and the kind of the gradients allow, kind of we are going for this rain garden approach wherever possible. Next slide. And once again, kind of as part of a coordinated approach, kind of all the seating will also be kind of coordinated with those edges as well. So we kind of reduce the elements of the clutter potential by having all these different things kind of amalgamated together in a way. Next slide. Yeah, and we'll also kind of weave in kind of the idea of public art into the fabric of the space. So within, we'll also have kind of the idea is to have a drainage channel which kind of runs through the space, and the water from that drainage channel could help to also feed those wet areas, those rain garden areas. Next slide. Yeah, so existing view here, so one we're all quite familiar with. So this kind of shows, I think, quite an inefficient use of space. There's quite wide areas of pavement. There's a lot of kind of space here without a particular kind of role or function or even identity really. Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a space for people to move through, but not really spend any sort of time at all. And you see there also the cut through for the vehicular traffic. Next slide. So here we're closing off that access through. We're installing those rain gardens as we've discussed. There's potential for kind of the incidental play features as well to weave in throughout the some of the rain garden areas. So really kind of making it quite an intense area of different uses really, but trying to also arrange things so you're able to grab that space, a little bit of kind of privacy or intimacy if you'd like, but also opportunities to like kind of spend time with a friend or meet someone here kind of in the centre of the high street. We also have a cycle access through here, kind of delineated by a contrasting colour material as well. Next slide. Similar approach again, so that we've just to demonstrate we've really thought about the lighting here as well. So we've got functional and feature lighting, so it really kind of makes a comfortable space after dark, and gives the space a really good ambience. But then also there's very functional lighting to the periphery to make sure there's sufficient light levels to make sure it's safe and secure. Next slide. Thanks, Aga. Alex.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, continuing along Church Street, just to stop at, oh, can we go back a slide? Sorry, can we go back one?
Yeah, I think it's frozen. Mine. Sorry.
Thank you. So yeah, just north of the space that Tim was talking about, again, we've got additional blue badge bays. Heading further east, so at the moment on Cecil Road, where we've removed the cycle parking, there was also a bus stand down there that TfL buses regularly use when there's issues. So we're relocating that there and then consolidating the bus stops here. So we've got the additional routes that were here on these two bus stops to improve the sort of the interaction with those buses, people getting on and off different buses. We've widened the crossing here. And then next slide, please, Aga. So moving towards Market Square, we've got a loading bay on the north side here. Excuse me, the crossing between, we really want to improve the connection between the shopping centre and Market Square. So what we're proposing here is a wide sort of 20-metre crossing. It's very similar to one that's sort of outside St Paul's Cathedral in central London, but it means that when the crossing's running, this whole space here can be used by pedestrians to cross between the Market Square and the shopping centre. Further east, blue badge bays, loading bays, a taxi rank, and also a motorcycle bay. And again, the loading bays on the south side, similar to what I mentioned at Coleman Parade. So the loading bays here and also at the western end of Church Street in the evenings can be used for 20-minute parking. So people, if they're picking up a takeaway, that sort of thing, or dropping people off at a restaurant, those movements will be permitted in the evenings. The carriageway is narrowed here to two lanes, and again allowing more planting on either side. Next slide, please. And this is just going to show an image of the proposed crossing. So here you've got Pearson's on the right and the Market Square on the left, and the single crossing outside the shopping centre, single relatively narrow crossing. And then next slide, please. And you can see there we've opened it up, so into the distance. We're narrowing the carriageway here, widening the footways, and introducing this really nice wide crossing to really improve that connection between the shopping centre and Pearson's and the Market Square. Thank you. Next slide.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, so the Market Square, one message we received loud and clear really from the first round of engagement way back was that this really needs to be the beating heart of Enfield. So that's what we're kind of trying to do here, and kind of revitalising the town's centrepiece really. I'll also mention that we've been working and consulting with the Old Enfield Charitable Trust as landowners to kind of meet their needs for the space, as well as the towns more kind of holistically as well. The market square will kind of be Enfield Town's showpiece, I suppose, and will kind of re-establish itself as an active and vibrant destination for the local residents, workers and visitors. One key move here is kind of removing its car parking function to make it kind of that more, I suppose, a more frequent destination and more flexible. The square will host kind of a variety of events and appropriate performances, as well as its famous weekly market. The idea is to have kind of very simple, recessive, but very high quality palette of materials to provide kind of an enhanced setting for the kind of surrounding fine architecture, really. Some wonderful kind of architectural gems around this space. Yeah, and the idea is to have a very accessible flush surface of which to host those events, but also to kind of allow people to easily move through and around. The high quality surface, as Alex kind of mentioned, will kind of extend across Church Street to the facade with Pearsons of Enfield to extend that space. While also the reinstatement of a historic line of trees beneath kind of dappled shade there with seats underneath will define the extent of the square. So two kind of things going on there. Fine detail and inscriptions or timelines even will be seamlessly woven into the design to help kind of describe the rich history of the market square, whilst there are opportunities to also kind of re-salvage and relay some of the kind of original material. So the cobbles that are there at the moment, which are really inaccessible, provide a bit of a kind of a very kind of bumpy surface, lots of trip hazards there. So relay those as part of the wider kind of surface material as kind of a tangible historic reference. Next slide. Yeah, so just a before and after here. So what we have is kind of, you can see it very clearly, is kind of an uneven, very inaccessible surface. Those curved edges and narrow footways kind of push people to the edges. It feels very much like a space arranged for private vehicles rather than for people, really. Next slide. So what we have here is, and it's not exactly the same position, sort of stepping back towards Church Street a little bit here and looking into the space. A single surface kind of designed from building edge to building edge will kind of redefine the space as very much a people-focused place. The market house retained in place here will kind of be repurposed as a new cafe kiosk. The idea is to have a kind of complementary but quite contemporary independent internal structure, which is inserted within the original structure kind of to respect that kind of architectural heritage. So we're not actually impacting on the market house building kind of at all. This aims to further kind of activate the square with alfresco dining opportunities. This can also help with that kind of evening economy. There'll be next slide. I think that's probably enough for that one. There'll be kind of improved lighting infrastructure to support events. So kind of the pop-up power units. So kind of the festoon lights you can see there will be able to be turned on and powered by pop-up lighting, pop-up power. The lighting itself is currently is from the edges of the building edges. And that's kind of where it will remain, but we're going to be improving that lighting from the edges, so we don't have any clutter within the space. No light columns within the space. Keep it very flexible. Next slide. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, as I mentioned, the approach from Church Street and the town onto London Road is reduced to 2 lanes, so enabling us to widen footways, potential for some outdoor dining, additional planting. And then at the junction itself, there was a lot of requests to look at a crossing on the eastern arm of the junction at this location here. If we investigated that, but it did generate a lot of queues heading down London Road and Church Street. So what we've done is introduced a crossing from the island to facilitate that movement across the eastern side of the junction. And then, as I touched on previously, wider footways on the north and south of the link between Jennerton Road and London Road. Next slide, please.
That's me. Thanks. So Fountain Island. So whereas at Library Green we had the People's Garden, here we have Fountain Island becomes the People's Plaza, and it's the idea is to have a social place for the community. Next slide. So really this is a very kind of, again, a very flexible space, allowing for kind of celebration, gatherings and kind of modest scale events and performances. The space will be kind of adaptable and programmable to meet the needs of a kind of a town-wide event calendar. We've tested a lot of different kind of configurations of different things that would happen within the space to make sure that that can function correctly here. Fountain Island will kind of supply opportunities for al fresco dining, where kind of visitors can enjoy kind of that bite to eat and a drink with friends while kind of sat in that kind of joyous setting surrounded by, you know, fabulous kind of architectural gems again. Next slide. Thanks. Okay, so the quite a bit of a disappointing view, I think, really. Okay, so I think the key things about this is that this shows a place very much to move through rather than a place for people to spend time kind of and revel in the delights of the place. There are very few places to sit. I think mainly people kind of sit on a perch on the edge of the fountain. The historic fountain itself kind of lacks presence, and the close proximity of an open nature to kind of the Church Street there, and the surrounding vehicle space kind of feels very hostile, and makes the space feel very unwelcoming and somewhere you certainly don't want to spend a lot of time. Next slide. So the proposal seeks to once again kind of include kind of that beautiful, biodiverse, climate resilient planting to the perimeter, which provides kind of a sense of refuge from those kind of surrounding vehicular spaces, while performing that kind of important rainwater capturing function again. Public seating will be arranged in kind of comfortable, safe and inviting arrangements to provide again those both kind of social opportunities and by contrast allow for more kind of intimate and private moments. What else? The drinking fountain is given kind of an improved setting. So through kind of the paving detail that surrounds it now here, but also kind of through the arrangement of the space, providing focus on the fountain feature. We also provide opportunity to maximize functionality and flexibility to the space through the inclusion of movable seating, seen in kind of the middle distance there behind the fountain. It's shown here in kind of an everyday mode, but that's the idea is that can be kind of fragmented and broken up and redistributed. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Next slide. So the evening view here kind of demonstrates a very kind of well lit, safe and secure environment again, which is kind of attractive to the idea is to attract kind of more legitimate users after dark, to improve that kind of natural surveillance, make it feel really safe with lots of people in the space. It also demonstrates kind of a greater scope, I think, for al fresco dining opportunities, with that kind of reinforced evening economy here. And those aforementioned kind of movable seats have been kind of repositioned in more social clusters to the edges. Next slide. I'm just going to mention more about the movable seats, just for kind of clarity. We've got quite a lot of experience in designing these for kind of other projects throughout kind of similar urban environments, and we'd like quite a few kind of lessons learnt. And for the avoidance of doubt, kind of these wouldn't be movable by kind of the general public. They'd require kind of a basic mechanical lift, kind of via kind of a pump truck or something similar, and that would normally be handled by kind of the town centre, the town council's town centre team. They're designed to be adequately weighted, with so a minimum weight of around 280 kilograms is always it seems like a good target weight. That seems adequate, and they kind of need to be stable, so kind of have a low centre of gravity, so they couldn't be kind of rolled or toppled and cause injury. So yeah, that's just give a bit of confidence really that the approach there it kind of designs out a lot of the risk. Next slide. I'm not sure there's one more for me, or is that it? Thanks, Alex.
Okay, so yeah, this is heading east towards Willow Road and the junction with Tesco. So as Richard mentioned, that you know there's still funding to be garnered for the scheme, but the aspiration is that we extend to the east and look at this junction as well. So at the moment, I think you need to cross, if you're heading in a diagonal direction across the junction, you need to cross 7 different pedestrian crossings. So the plan is to tighten up the junction, have direct crossings on all arms of the junction, widen the footways on the edges to allow for planting, and also protected cycle facilities for all movements through the junction. Thank you. So that completes our run through. So as Richard mentioned, if you've got any comments or questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll endeavour to answer those and we can come back to them. Just to touch on the data collection and analysis. So obviously an awful lot of information and surveys have been collected. Importantly, this was pre-COVID when the data collection took place. So we've collected traffic volumes by vehicle type, speeds, bus journey times, an awful amount of parking and loading data that also picks up how many blue badges are being used across the town centre, signal data, collision data, and a lot of that information we put into traffic models so that we can get a detailed understanding of the journey times, the delays, the queues in the current situation, and then we'll model the proposed situation to understand the impacts. Next slide, please. So in terms of journey times is one of the key ones. So with the introduction of a lot of or the additional pedestrian and cycle facilities through the town, we're looking at a 7 to 13% reduction in motor traffic compared to 2019 levels. Some of that will reassign onto local roads in the short term, but also a lot of that, I mean, will move in different ways. So obviously with COVID, we've seen a lot of people change their travel patterns, people working from home more regularly. With similar schemes like this, we see people travel at different times of the day. If they don't have to be on the road in the morning peak, they'll choose to travel at different times of day. People will link their trips. So rather than going to the shops and back or work and back, they'll combine those trips, therefore reducing the overall number of vehicles. Obviously, with the improvements to walking and cycling and in the area, we're hoping that there will be an element of mode shift. People on sort of longer routes will pick more strategic routes. So, for example, the A10 and the A406. But we do accept, particularly in the short term, there may be some reassignment onto the local roads. So there'll be a detailed monitoring strategy as part of this. So once implemented, we'll keep reviewing that local area to understand if there's any issues and mitigate those where we need to. Next slide, please. So just to give you a sort of overview of the impact on journey times, there's more information about this on the website, but you can see there on the left we've got a table with journey times for general traffic. So in each direction, we're saying 1 to 2 minutes in the northbound, eastbound slightly less, similar to southbound, and the westbound there's a slight improvement in the PM peak and a slight increase in the AM peak. And then the bus journey times, we spent a lot of time working with TfL buses, and we're seeing some increases and some decreases, and we're looking to work with TfL buses to mitigate those journey times and get an improvement on the predicted journey times, which TfL buses are supportive of. Thank you, Aga. And this just gives us a quick summary. So the blobs you see on the plan are where we're proposing new pedestrian improvements. And then we've got the cycle links through the town centre, and it just shows you how we're connecting into existing and proposed routes on the wider network. So we've got the C20 heading down the A105, and there's an aspiration for the cycle network to head east towards Ponders End, and then west up Windmill Hill towards Cockfosters. Thank you.
So there are a number of ways that you can get involved and share your views on this project, but as well as opportunities to come and talk to us at various events that we're holding across the town centre. We have a short survey that's open until the 25th of September. This is asking a few different things. So firstly, how you think the proposed plan responds to the Enfield town design principles, your suggestions and ideas for the sensory garden that's proposed in the library green, as well as the opportunity to make the suggestion or multiple suggestions for a name for the new public space, which is at the junction of Church Street and Little Park Gardens near Nationwide and the old telephone boxes. So by submitting a name as well as your contact details, you could go into in for the chance to win £300 to spend locally in Enfield. So I encourage you to take that survey either online via the project page, or you can request a paper survey through us via the email that's shown there on the screen. But paper surveys are also available at the Enfield Town Library. The email address to contact us if you would like any of the materials in another language or another format is healthystreets@enfield.gov.uk. Next slide, please. So we're actually at Fountain Island on Sunday at the Month of Sundays event, but we're going to be at the Library Green next Tuesday on the 9th of August from 10 till 1 p.m. As well as back there in September on the 10th of September at the same time. You can see the exhibition of the proposed plan is currently up at Enfield Town Library, and that's going to be there until the 25th of September. You can view that inside the library or just on the outside. And we've also got some other pop-ups running at Fountain Island, like I've just mentioned, but also the Market Square on Friday, 9th of September. And we obviously have tonight's webinar as well. And as mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the project page, which is the link shown on the screen there. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll just cover briefly the next steps. So the engagement that is currently running, we refer to as phase 4 engagement. So this is planned to be, as Liz mentioned, to run until 25th of September. So once that concludes, we will analyze all the responses and make any adjustments as needed. We will also be continuing working with the Market Trust. So the plans that you would have seen just now, we developed them, we work closely with the trust, and we're also working with them on how the market can operate even better and on the offer at the Market Square. We also, as mentioned earlier, are waiting to understand what the funding situation is with TfL. So the uncertainty has been sort of ongoing for quite some time now, but we do hope that at this stage that some more clarity will be provided in autumn. And based on that funding information, based on the funding that is confirmed, we will then determine the overall scope of the project. As Richard mentioned at the start of the presentation, what you would have seen just now, it's an ambitious plan that requires a lot more funding that we currently have secured. So should we not have all that funding available, we will be, as mentioned earlier, looking at a staged approach to implementation. That obviously requires council approvals, and then we will be moving on to next stage, what is called detailed design. So that's essentially the plans that you would have seen now, but with the next level, more detailed designs such as drainage or where the cables are going, etc., etc. So this is what we refer to as detailed design. Only once that is developed, we would then be undertaking a statutory consultation and then moving into the implementation. Thank you very much. So that concludes our presentation, and I'll just hand over to Richard now. You are on mute, Richard.
Thanks very much, Aga. Thanks, everybody. Right, we're going to go straight into questions because there's quite a few. I will be able to answer some. Some I'll pass to the project team. So if we can keep our answers nice and short, that would be great. So let me. We had a lot of contributions, so just give me a second. Okay, so first of all, I think there's a question about outside of the station plaza. Also a comment that some people don't like the word plaza. And what I will say before I actually get into some of these questions is, a number of observations have been made, and we've heard both here tonight and other events. We recognise that producing a scheme that everybody likes every element is probably not realistic, and we accept that some people will like some bits more than others, and some people might even dislike certain bits, and our job is to listen to that feedback and to evolve the plans in a sort of balanced and measured way. So one question about the station, bit outside the front of the station, and whether we'd managed to widen that pinch point that exists as you go around down to Jennison Road. So we have managed to widen that a little bit. We've obviously got the constraints of still enabling the buses to move around there, but that has seen some widening. We've had a question about disabled bays, so if I could pass this to Alex, please. Questions around the number and location. You might not be able to give complete detail on location, but yeah, if you could just give a quick overview of disabled bays, Alex.
Sure. So I think we recognise that, yeah, with the cycle facilities coming in, there's a lot of single yellow line that is disappearing that Blue Badge users are able to use. At the moment, in terms of formal Blue Badge bays, there's one. We're increasing that to 16. So we've got Coleman Parade, Church Street, Sarnesfield Road, London Road. So they're spread across the town centre. And as I mentioned at the end of the presentation, the data analysis that was collected looked at the Blue Badge usage across the town centre, and we believe that the 16 bays we've got spread across the town centre accommodates the Blue Badge usage.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Alex. So moving on, we've got a question around how this work relates to the Palace Exchange and the shopping centre development there. So I just wanted to clarify that that this is a council-led project versus that which is the private developer. They obviously brought forward some plans I think last year, and at the moment they're not taking those forward, and the council are waiting for for further discussions to have about what plans that might look like. I think what's important to say is that we've developed these plans further now, are in a better place to help work with the developers to say what we think that the public realm needs to look like, and to help explain the design principles that we've come up with as well, for them to also consider. Okay. Next question we've got is about, let me see. So the raised table crossing across the Market Square, one for Alex, please. Just people asking questions about the materials of that, and whether that's significant or strong enough to take the weight of the traffic, etc. that would be
yeah, sure. So I think there's been a lot of lessons learned from previous schemes, and the evolution in materials used is constantly being developed, and it also comes down to the quality of the foundation. So yeah, recognizing that this is a busy route with a lot of buses and a lot of HGVs will ensure that the materials and in particular the foundations are appropriate, so it doesn't become uneven or need replacing in a short period of time.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And while we're on this image as well, we've also had questions about the Market Square and the materials in there, and some reference to the cobbles. I should make it absolutely clear that the Market Square is owned by the Old Enfield Charitable Trust, and what happens in that space is is their decision. We've been working collaboratively with them to develop some designs that we think will work for the town centre, and so we are working closely with them. I think, as already been mentioned, the cobbles can create some challenges with accessibility, but also they are part of the history of the area, and I think, as Tim mentioned, there's the potential for some designs that can create an accessible space but still has some accents of those cobbles. But ultimately that will be a decision for the Old Enfield Charitable Trust, and we'll continue to work with them on that. So hopefully that's clear. Next, so a question around trees, and are we able to, maybe a question for Tim perhaps, around trees and whether we can plant more in the town centre?
Yes, indeed. I haven't got the exact figure to hand, but we have had a kind of a below ground utility survey completed, and what we've done is we've been throughout the town centre and explored opportunities where they're possible to plant additional trees throughout. So wherever kind of those constraints allow, we have suggested new tree planting. As Richard said, like at the start of the slide deck, we talked about funding. So you know, holding to a number throughout the whole town centre, I'm not sure I can give that, but in terms of project by project, we certainly are increasing the number of trees throughout. Does that answer the question? Yep.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think there was some comment on some trees that have perhaps been removed in the past on Cecil Road. You won't know about that, Tim, but I can cover that. You know, if the council has, you know, the council has a very passionate and committed tree team. Occasionally, trees do have to be removed, and typically where that happens, they should be getting replaced as a matter of routine. So if you feel there's a place where there's a tree that's not been replaced, do report that through to the council, and that can be looked at. But overall, we hope to see an overall increase in trees as part of this project. That links, I think, to maintenance. I'll address that. So a number of questions around maintenance and maintaining these spaces. So these schemes are being discussed in consultation with, you know, internal teams at the council who will be responsible for maintaining them, and a lot of thought will be going into the planting. So there've been some comments about, you know, the current maintenance on some of the spaces, and you know, there'll be lots of thought to go into the design of the planting areas in such a way that can reduce the maintenance burden, but clearly resources do have to be allocated to that, and you know, that's part and parcel as well of the rain garden approach that we've been discussing, that also helps with that. Okay, I'm just looking through. Aga, could you just talk a little bit more about the timetable and next steps? I know, you know, in big picture terms.
Absolutely. So we'll be looking at the detailed design next. So that's a few months just for that stage. Then this statutory consultation. So that's 2023. And then we'll be looking at implementation in 2024. And again, going back to the point earlier about the funding and the scope, that will then determine the duration of the works. Because if the works on carriageway are involved, that will take obviously longer than if we have just the funding that we have secured and we are able to work within public realm spaces. So then less impact and less time will be required for those type of works.
Okay, great. Thanks, Aga. Next question for Alex is a question around speed limits, and are there any plans to reduce speed limits, and you know, could you give an indication of where, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So yes, we'll reduce the speed limit across the town centre to 20 miles an hour, and that will essentially cover the extent of the area you're looking at. So it will be for the complete scheme, it will be starting at Willow Road in the east, and then Essex Road in the south, and then coming down Chase side as well in the west.
Okay,
coming down from Chase side. Sorry.
Thanks, Alex. So we've got another question around about Fountain Island currently, and how that does have some sort of concrete planters out in that space. So there range of different views on those, but safe to say that the long-term plan is to replace those. And if we can bring up the Fountain Island diagram, which I think we're just moving to, there will be plans as part of the new scheme to introduce more permanent fixed planters that, as well as enclosing the space, as Tim's talked about, also will offer some form of protection as well to people who might be eating out, again, as we've heard, in that space. So certain measures are important to make sure that we've got nice, safe environments, and they will form part of the developed scheme as well. Okay, let me have a look through some ones coming in as we speak. So there's been some questions around parking. Alex, would you just explain a little bit about, because I think we are reducing on street parking, but there is obviously the car parks still remain. Could you just sort of elaborate on that a little more?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So yeah, we are removing sort of the formal on-street parking bays, notably the section at the western end of Church Street here. But across the town centre, we've got over 1,100 parking bays. Within the car parks, we've got the multi-storey car parks, but also the surface level ones. We've got New River Loop, Little Park Gardens, Sydney, Church Street. Some of those do close early, so what we'll be looking to, again, to support that evening economy is have those open for longer, so that they're more accessible for particularly in the evenings. So we think getting that balance between obviously allowing loading, allowing blue badge bays, and then I touched on the south side of Church Street in the evenings will allow short-term parking at loading bays at the western end, the eastern end, and Coleman Parade. So if you're picking up a takeaway or something like that, you can, or dropping someone who can't walk too far to a restaurant, that can take place before moving on to one of the car parks.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Another question for you around loading by Coleman Parade. So I think there's some suggestion of public rail and pedestrian improvements there, but how can you touch on the loading, and we might be able to bring that slide up as well.
So we're proposing a loading bay in front of the bus stop, so just where my cursor is here on the wider plan, and that obviously we've looked at the type of vehicles, so that the larger vehicles are around 10 meters that use the or service the businesses in this area, and we'll be using the loading bay can accommodate those. So obviously if there's no bus at the bus stop, they can pull straight in, but equally if there is a bus there, they'd be able to reverse back in, which is standard practice for loading bays across London.
Thanks, Alex. And if we can stay with you, so in that same area, we've got just some questions about drop off and pick up at the station.
Sure.
And how that might work for both taxis, but also perhaps individual motorists who might be dropping people off there.
Sure. So obviously we've got the service road that passes in front of the Enfield town station. Now there's often people are parking there and vehicles are unable to effectively get through and sort of have it effectively operating as a pickup and drop off. So what we're proposing is to essentially relocate that same facility but onto Southbury Road. So there'll be there's 2 parking bays there with a maximum stay of 5 minutes. So if you're dropping someone off at the station or picking them up, you can pull in and park there. If you're hiring a taxi, obviously you can request them to meet you there, and again pick up and drop off a taxi can take private hire vehicle I should say could take place there, and if you're in a black cab you can be dropped off there. What you can't do there is sit for an indeterminate amount of time and just wait. So it's just making that more efficient and more enforceable. It will be on highway land, so the sort of the management and the enforcement of that space will be more efficient as well.
Okay, thanks, Alex. I've got a question about engagement with businesses and whether we've done that and how we've done that. Maybe to Aga initially, and then anybody else who might want to add.
Yeah, so we have engaged with businesses on, I think, a couple of occasions, specifically asking about loading. We have had dedicated parking and loading engagement at the previous round of engagement, and we have actually taken on board the comments as needed. We've reviewed the plans and we've actually made adjustments. So what you see now is a result of previous engagement and response to that engagement. I don't know if Alex wanted to add anything in particular to this.
No, I think that covers it. So yeah, as you say, detailed discussions around the loading. There's a lot of data that backs it up as well. So we tried to get a balance and following the feedback from that engagement, we've refined the design slightly to include additional loading where needed.
Okay, thanks. We've got some more questions about funding and total cost of the project. So I think the proposals that we're looking at here are more like the region of 15 million pounds to deliver the full scope of what we might want to do. So that's obviously a significant amount of money, and as we all know, there are inflationary pressures at the moment as well. So the cost of works will increase over time. So really the Transport for London money is really quite key to bring forward some of the transport improvements that we're suggesting. But as I've mentioned previously, we do have £5 million available that will enable us to take forward a series of improvements, potentially focusing on some of the public realm areas. But that exactly what priority that will take is work that is ongoing, and as I said, I hope by the autumn we've got a bit more clarity on the TfL funding position as well, and then we can discuss with elected members and other key stakeholders what that sort of sequence of delivery might be, and then there may be some elements of the project that then are delivered in the years to come. But we think that it's sensible and appropriate to come up with a proposed plan that is comprehensive in terms of its look at the town centre, even if it can't all be implemented in one big bang. We'll then have a plan that incrementally we can make sure is delivered. So I know that's not a completely specific answer, because frankly we don't know the level of funding that's going to be available at this time, but hopefully that explains the approach that we're taking. Okay, so we've got a question. How are we doing for time? I think we've got some more time to keep going through some of these questions. So we've got a question around art and heritage and things such as that. Maybe if I pass to Tim initially, Aga may want to contribute, but do we have plans for things like that?
Yeah, sure. So the intention is that we will have kind of a steer on the artwork. So we'll effectively provide an art brief, which can then go out to commission artists to put their interpretation on that approach, if you will. What we have identified is that each kind of space actually throughout the town centre has got something quite unique about it, some quite interesting stories and narratives behind them. So we have kind of suggested what those different kind of art elements could be, but throughout with a wider sort of more coordinated picture for all the whole town, all spaces. I think that's fair. Argo, is that right?
Yeah, just to add that, yes, because we have mentioned, I think, on one of the boards, perhaps this is where the question is coming from, that the art will be artists will be commissioned to look at that specifically. So at the moment, design do incorporate different art pieces, but we will be looking at this separately with the relevant team within the council to ensure that the process is robust and sort of done as a one piece rather than piecemeals, because this is the nature of the work of artists. So once we have the scope completed, this is the stage when we will be looking at sourcing the artists. I don't want to say too much more about the commission process itself, but this is the point where we'll be looking at that piece of work to make sure it's one cohesive and holistic approach.
Yeah, I would say just to feed on top of that really as well, is that what you're seeing here, I think, is quite a small snapshot of quite a long journey we've been on. We've got some quite in-depth analysis and research into each of these spaces, and there really are some quite interesting stories. For example, that I mentioned the Sadler's Mill stream, which goes under that new pocket park. There's also the fact that John Keats School, Clark's Academy was within the context of Station Plaza. And we're on the edge of kind of those old rural hunting grounds as well with the Library Green. So there's an awful lot of kind of interesting stories that can be told, I think, throughout each of these spaces. And the idea is to have a lot of that integrated within the kind of fabric of the place, so it kind of feels really kind of cohesive and coordinated. Yeah,
that's great. That's very helpful. Yeah, thank you. Okay, some questions for Alex. We've got a question about Raleigh Road and traffic flow? Are we proposing any changes, and how that might impact, people? I think we've shown that as people potentially cycling that route. And also linked to that you can perhaps cover off is access to Little Park Gardens and the car park down there, the grammar school, and just a sort of brief summary of how that might work, just to clarify that that's being considered.
Sure. So touching on Raleigh Road first. So Raleigh Road will stay one-way southbound as it is at the moment, but the traffic flows there are very light. So there's capacity to make it one-way southbound, but allow cyclists only northbound. So the traffic movement would stay as is, but cyclists would be permitted to travel northbound on Cecil Road. In terms of the link north to Little Park Gardens car park and the school, so the junction here outside the station, you can come in and out of Little Park Gardens here. We are changing the movement slightly, so this section of Little Park Gardens here would be eastbound only for general traffic. Currently it's westbound, and then we allow a westbound facility for cyclists coming in the opposite direction. So a sort of a strong cycle connection to the school for pupils, but also the ability to continue accessing the Little Park Gardens car park to the north. So that does mean a slight adjustment in the parking along here. So we are losing a couple of residential bays along here. Again, further details on the impact of parking at each location are available on the website. There's a transport technical summary there that provides the detail of the changes in parking at each section of the plan.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Alex. A couple of questions about the library and will the opening hours be extended, and the accessibility of the toilets. So that's a good question. I don't think we know the answer to that one, so that's something that we can take away and look at. Also, quite a detailed question about sort of cycle routing that I think if you could email that into us at healthystreets@enfield.gov.uk. Otherwise, that might be quite a complicated or just take a little bit too much time, and we've only got a matter of minutes left. Another question to just sort of about the opportunities to get involved. And I'm wondering, Liz, whether you could just reiterate those.
Yeah, sure. So we have a project page which is hosted on the Let's Talk Enfield website. So that's letstalk.enfield.gov.uk/Enfield Town. That's it on the screen there. On that page, you'll find a range of documents and information, as well as the survey, which is open until the 25th of September. So I encourage you to take part in that. And as part of that survey, we're running a competition where we're asking for submissions of ideas for the name for the new public space. We're in the town centre on a number of occasions for various pop-ups and drop-in sessions. So we're at the Library Green on the 9th of August and the 10th of September. And we also have an upcoming pop-up on the Market Square on the 9th of September. Like I said, this webinar is going to be uploaded onto the project page if anyone needs to watch that later, and for people who weren't able to attend tonight. And finally, we have the exhibition running at the Enfield Town Library until the 25th of September, and that is a series of information boards as well as the proposed plan that you've seen tonight, and some of the proposed designs for the public spaces, and that's there until the end of the engagement period as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Liz. Well, that pretty much takes us to the end of the session. I think just showing on the screen here, we've got where you can find out more information, which is on the project page, and of course you can also email us at healthystreets@enfield.gov.uk, or indeed write to us at the address shown. So we hope that that's proved informative. Thank you to Aga, Liz, Tim, and Alex for presenting. Do get involved and complete the survey. We'd love to hear your suggestions about the new public square. Please get involved in the sensory garden workshops. Come and see us at a pop-up. We're really interested to hear what your views are. So thank you very much for listening, and we will and watching, and we'll close this webinar there. Many thanks and good evening.